Hi everyone, this video is going to help you continue learning each of the tools in the Analyze tab of the data mining add-in for Excel. So once again, make sure that you have open the bike buyers data set, which is posted here on my Learning Suite schedule. You may have posted somewhere else. If you installed the data mining add-in software, then it'll be the sample Excel file that came with it, which you can open, called DM add-in sample data. So open that up. We're going to work here on Table Analysis Tool Sample, and we're going to work on Detect Categories. So the purpose of detecting categories is to do what's called a cluster analysis. So a cluster analysis is designed to try and separate the data we have here, meaning each row and each person, each customer, into mutually exclusive groups to the extent possible. So based on all of the variables we choose to put in, it's going to try and draw lines among the various groups and clusters of consumers so that we can perform separate analyses, we can be more targeted in our approach for those customers. So with your cursor somewhere inside the table, click Detect Categories. Alright, now we have a list of all the columns we want to use. As with the Analyze Key Influencers tool, we don't want to use columns that are too similar to each other. So, for example, in this data set, everything's relatively different. There's not a lot of inter-item correlation among each of these independent variables. But if you're working on another data set and you had something like age and birth date, you would pick only one of those two and not both. So we're going to keep everything checked other than ID. Notice how it already detects that ID is probably not going to help us. We have a couple of other options. One, we can let it auto-detect the number of categories, or we may have a theory in our mind already, or there may be some generally believed guidance in this market that there really are only two types of bike customers. So in that case, you can force it to detect a certain number of categories, and it'll stick with that. I'm going to go ahead and let it auto-detect. You would only pick one of these numbers if you had a good theory or good reason why there should only be a certain number, or there should be a certain number of groups. Otherwise, leave it with auto-detect. Next, we have this option to append a category column to the original Excel table, which means over here it'll put something called category, and it'll list which category they were all assigned to. I'm going to go ahead and leave that checked so you can see what other features that offers. So click Run. We'll wait and let the data be sent over to SQL Server. Looks like it's detecting patterns done. Now it's putting everything back over here. Alright, so we have some pretty cool options. What we have first here is a list of all the categories that were detected, and it tells us it found 7, and the number of rows it decided to put into each category. This is very clean. Typically you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 categories with many records, and then a few others with a much smaller amount. This is a pretty even division among groups relative to other data I've looked at. So what we have down here, whoops, too far, is each of the field value or column value pairs that best define each category. And right now it's filtered by category 1. You can see the little filter symbol here. And then we have the relative importance of each of these column value pairs in determining that category. So this first category is chiefly characterized by low income earners, people less than 40,000, less than 39,000. Next, and notice it's much smaller than this first one, these are people who tend to live in Europe. These are people who have these occupations. But once you had a chance to go through and examine each of these column value pairs and characterize this category, you'll actually be able to come back up here, or want to come back up here, click on this category 1, which is what's being described here, and change the name of it. So I would call this maybe poor, well, this is going to sound wrong, but poor Europeans. Alright, so I have a particular, this is what's best described by my first couple of values here. So now, notice it changes my category over here to poor Europeans, and click back here on Table Analysis Tool Sample. Here's this new column for category that's been created. And notice it's also changed to give that descriptive category over here in this table as well. Now we can actually use this category cluster here in our future analyses of analyzing key influencers. So typically I'll actually do my cluster analyses first before anything else to help me begin exploring the data. Alright, so back here on Categories Report, let's give some different names. Let's change the filter here. Instead of poor Europeans, let's change it to category 2 and describe this group. Alright, so these are the people with no cars. However, they have graduate degrees, but they're in what's determined here to be a low income. Short commute distance, and yes, they do purchase a bike. Honestly, to me, this sounds like PhD students that live in an inner city or something like that. No car, they're working on a doctorate degree, they're not making a lot of money as a doctoral student, they live close to school, and so they bike there or something like that. Anyway, I'm just taking a guess. You can use whatever title you want. I'll call this PhD students. Changes my category, and again, if I come over to my original data, now it's changed it over here as well. So when I'm going through a data mining process, I'll go through, identify my categories, and describe each of my groups carefully before moving on and doing anything else. Category 3 we'll take a quick look at. This one is basically those who are young and have no kids. Childless singles or something like that. Anyway, I'm not going to continue to change those, but that's the idea. We can come down here though to category profiles, and this just gives us a chart of everything we already sort of have. And it says, okay, you can filter by category, by column. In this case, I think we're looking at, let's see here, age. So this describes for each category a general distribution of the ages from low to high. So you can see, category 3, that's my very young people. Here, category 6, this is my mediums. The one with the most high, actually I can't tell if this is young. Oh, actually I think this is low, yeah. And this one is high. Yep. So category 4 is the one that has more of the older generation in it. So what I would probably want to look at is, instead of age, I would change this to purchase bike. Okay. And see, of my categories, who are my bike purchasers. So category 2 is a healthy one for me, and I want to make sure I treat them well and take good care of them. Same with category 6, and so forth. That's it for the Detect Categories tool, and we'll stop there.